welcome everybody to another edition of Audio Judo. We're glad you're joining us. Got some old business to take care of before we roll into the new episode. We actually got mail.
Somebody wrote us.
Right? Somebody had some suggestions. Our episode from 2 episodes now ago was our soundtrack episode, and he had a couple of suggestions that we did not mention. Apocalypse Now.
Oh, that's a good one.
Fantastic soundtrack. And Last Temptation of Christ, which is a Peter Gabriel recorded soundtrack, which is excellent. And I had forgotten all about that. So thank you for those recommendations.
Do you want to give him a by name shout out?
Oh, yeah. Chris Delisle, we appreciate the input. He also had a couple of corrections that I made some mistakes on. I mentioned that the Black Album was recorded after Purple Rain. I said that it was recorded before Purple Rain. It is actually recorded after Purple Rain, right before Sign of the Times. And also, I had mentioned that Revolver was recorded super quick by the Beatles. It was actually Rubber Soul that was recorded in a month, and the Revolver sessions dragged on for an exhausting 2.5 months. So, right? So we appreciate those corrections. Hey, we want to get it right. We're not going to make mistakes. We're probably going to make a lot of mistakes, and the onus is then on you guys to step up and send us some mail at info@audiojudo.com and tell us that we are way wrong, like Chris did.
Yes.
And we appreciate the feedback.
Thank you so much, Chris, for being a bigger nerd than Matthew.
Right?
We really appreciate it.
I appreciate it. So today...
Oh, I have one thing I need to mention as well.
Go ahead.
My personal apologies. I know that the notes that have the links to all the songs that we talk about in each one of the shows, they end up being a mess on some services. And I trying to figure out a better way to do that. And I haven't discovered anything yet. So I apologize if you go to look for like a link and you're like, it's got to be on Spotify. And there's just like a huge mess of blue links in all the details for every one of these episodes. I promise I am working on it. I just haven't found a good way to do it yet.
We'll just call it a work in progress.
A work in progress. I like that.
I think
that's it. That's all I had.
Oh, that's it. Okay. Yeah. This week's episode, we're going to talk about before and after. We chose 3 bands to discuss that had significant lineup changes and how they impacted the albums surrounding them. We picked these 3 off the top of our heads. We know there are most bands, I'd say most bands go through some type of personnel change through the years. Some are more impactful than others. These are the 3 we picked. If you have recommendations for future episodes, please drop us a line and say, you should have talked about band X, and we can consider it and do some research and see if, somewhere down the line we can do that as well. But we chose 3 bands: Van Halen,
oh yes,
Journey, and Yes.
Oh yes.
All with significant lineup changes, and
especially Yes.
Oh yeah. We are going to kick it off with Van Halen because that's probably the band most people are familiar with the significant lineup change.
It is definitely the first one, especially, is very high profile.
Yeah.
It's everybody knows David Lee Roth and Sammy Hagar.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you don't know Van Halen, you probably know one of those 2 guys.
I would hope at this point you would know something about.
They've both done enough reality television at this point that
right. I'm
sure there's somebody out there that only knows them from reality television, which is kind of ridiculous.
And some people might only know Sammy Hagar from his Tequila.
Also true.
But Van Halen, the band itself, had 5 albums, I believe, with David Lee Roth.
Yeah, that's correct.
Before they released 1984, which 1984 was their high watermark with David Lee Roth.
Absolutely.
Obviously. 10 million records, multitude of hits. And one of the first things I did was compare 1984, so the last record with David Lee Roth, and 5150, which is the first
record with Sammy Hagar.
Right? To see how those 2 things compare. What I did is I took the hits out of the equation.
Okay.
Because Hot for Teacher, Panama, Jump, And the stuff from 5150, Dreams and Love Comes Walking In. Love Walks In, I believe is what it's really called. Love Walks In. They stand on their own merits. They're hits. And to me, that's not what defined either record. What defined the record were the secondary tracks.
Okay.
And how what that band was becoming. Eddie Van Halen wanted to mature his sound. He was frustrated with the party band element that Van Halen had become through the years. A lot of that resting squarely on David Lee Roth's shoulders.
I would agree with that.
So you have these group of secondary songs, Top Jimmy, Drop Dead Legs, Girl Gone Bad, and House of Pain, which to me are much more listenable tracks than the hits are.
Okay. That's just unusual to me. The lesser known tracks are much more listenable to you.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting.
Because those tracks don't sound like the party band to me. There was much more composition going on in House of Pain, Drop Dead Legs, which was to me where the evolution of Eddie Van Halen was coming. He'd been trying to stretch his legs. He kept getting slapped down by Ted Templeman, who was the producer, and David Lee Roth, who were trying to maintain this. We want to record it like a live band. We want it to just be
well, I know
in your face.
David Lee Roth's thing was also he wanted to do a lot more covers, right? He wanted to keep, because they had done several covers at that point, and he was like, let's not push the envelope. Let's not do new stuff. Let's keep doing covers because people like them. Mm-hmm. And it's, it's quick, it's easy, it's in and out of the studio.
Yeah, and Eddie was a little bit, I think, resentful of the fact that he was only being recognized as a fireworks guitarist.
Yeah.
And that is not what he wanted to be. He wanted to be the consummate musician, recognized for his composition and not just playing Eruption over and over again.
Well, that's why he the album 5150 is named after the studio that he built.
Yes.
5150, which is California penal code for like a psychotic person.
Yeah, for mentally unstable
person, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
But I know that the whole reason he built the studio was because he was fed up with having producers and having other band members be able to take control because they were not in a space that he had control of.
Correct.
And he built the studio specifically so that he could, and 1984 was the first album they recorded in the studio. And so it was kind of like a bleed over of ideas that they had before that, at least in my opinion. They're kind of, most of the ideas were not new. They weren't created in that studio. They just happened to be recorded in that studio because that's where they were at the time.
For 5150 or for
1984.
Okay.
And then 5150, I feel like most of that album is new. It was specifically created while he was working in the studio, while he was able to, be free to just do whatever he wanted in the studio.
Well, and
actually work on new music.
And he also had the benefit of having another musician in the band that could write a guitar part and play a guitar part and brought that to the table. And there's certainly a maturity on 5150 that doesn't exist with David Lee Roth. There's a growth. There's also a stodginess to it because Hagar is, he's not the party guy.
Yeah.
So that it's a little stiff. And when he tries to become the party guy, it almost becomes comical.
I do think that it's interesting that the very first track on 5150,
Summer
Nights, starts out with him going, "Hello, baby."
Oh, no. First song is Good Enough. Sorry.
That's right. I'm sorry.
But it still starts the same.
"Hello, baby." I mean, it's such a like David Lee Roth
thing
move.
to do.
And it's like, so it makes me wonder, like, okay, are you doing it to say like, oh no, we haven't changed. It's the same Van Halen. Or are you doing it to try to be like, this is what we used to be, and now hear everything that comes after that? Or is it just
like trying to
ease everybody into it, sort of?
Ease them in, pass the torch,
yeah,
snuff the torch. Like,
is it like mockery? Are they like, this is how stupid David Lee Roth used to be?
To me, that's what it always felt like.
Like it's mockery.
It felt like he was mocking David Lee Roth. And a lot could be said on both sides of that. I mean, 1984 sold 10 million records.
Yeah.
5150 didn't. However, 5150 was their first number one record.
Mm-hmm.
But 1984 got Thriller blocked.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it probably would have I would say most assuredly it would have been their first number one had it not been for Michael Jackson's Thriller.
I would agree with that.
But that, like 5150 to me, I get the maturity. I get Eddie growing up wanting to sound more like an adult and less like the guy playing Whiskey A Go-Go in LA.
Yeah.
He wanted to become broader. So 1984's has this, not the beginning, but more thick keyboards. And then 5150, he takes it to the next level, almost writing exclusively his melodies on keyboards, which to me, there's something a little sterile about how that was recorded. To me, the drums, they're electronic.
I'm sorry, how 5150 was recorded?
The drums were electronic. Like they were all pads.
Oh.
And you can hear the doo, doo, doo. It's a very percussive pad, like electronic sound to it. His bass drums, same way. Everything very, very electronic. And it bugs me because he's such a good player. He was relying on technology more than technique at that point. And there's Michael Anthony is pretty much gone on 5150. Bass is so buried in the mix. It's so buried. And it's unfortunate because I think that record could have been a lot better. They didn't want Eddie to produce it. Warner Brothers didn't trust Eddie to be in control of the whole thing. So Ted Templeman, who was their original producer, was out. And they hired Don Landy to produce it. And then they brought in Mick Jones, who's the guitarist from Foreigner.
Yeah.
To help produce and kind of keep them on task, so to speak. And I think his vision, like Foreigner, I think that sterile sound permeated that record. I mean, some of it is fantastic. Like his guitar sound is great. Best of Both Worlds and the title track 5150 it's some of the greatest sounding guitar he ever had, solos aside. But just his tone was much better than it had been. He used to be just whiny, playing that Kramer all the time. It was much better. Like, it's hard to say, like, which album is better.
I gotta be honest with you. My opinion, the notes that I wrote down here are literally like, I can't decide between these two albums. Because they're different. They both sound very different, but they're both very good albums. They're both very well put together. They're just different times in the same band's lifespan.
Right. And I think with different goals.
Yeah.
Their dynamic changed so much with Sammy Hagar.
Yeah. Well, I know in a couple of different interviews, Sammy Hagar has said basically the same quote. And just to summarize it without actually quoting him, the quote was something along the lines of like, Eddie wanted all the creative control, but he wanted someone else to lead the band. And that's what David Lee Roth had been doing. But when he decided to start going and doing a solo career and he wanted to go do a movie and he wanted to do covers, Eddie didn't like where that was going. So they let David Lee Roth leave the band. And then when they brought in Sammy Hagar, he was like, okay, I'm the new guy. I don't need to lead. I want, Eddie's obviously in charge, and Eddie didn't really know how to be in charge,
which is why they wouldn't leave him alone.
He kept kind of shoving Sammy Hagar into the front and being like, you're the leader, you're the band guy, you're the leader, you're the front man. And then Sammy Hagar would be like, okay, well, let's do, there's a famous part of the quote that's like, he would say, I want the new album cover to be black. And then Eddie would be like, no, it's got to be white. And then Sammy Hagar would say, all right, well, let's do it white. And then Eddie would say, no, black. Let's go with the black album cover. And like he's done variations of that same quote over and over and over again. I've seen.
So you get to the root of Van Halen's issue, longevity wise. Why have they changed lead singer so many times?
3 times.
But really, David Lee Roth, Sammy Hagar, Gary Cherone, David Lee Roth, Sammy Hagar, David Lee Roth. Why does that keep happening? Because Eddie doesn't want to be the front man, but he wants to be in control.
Yes.
So it's got to be strangling for the front man who's being told, lead the band, but just do as I say. How do you deal with that? If you're a front man, you're a type A personality anyway.
Yes.
You're the one, you want the attention. You want the limelight. I want to stand at the front of the stage with the microphone and F all you guys.
Yeah.
I want all the chicks looking at me. I want everything right here. And how do you deal with that if you're being told,
Yeah,
just do this instead.
I know you want to stand up in front. I know you want to be the lead, but go ahead and do that. But could you stand 2 feet to the right?
Right.
Could you back up just a little bit? Could you do this? Could you do that? Could you change this? Could you wear a wig? Could you do this? Like,
when I saw them in 1988, it was the Monsters of Rock tour.
Ooh.
In 88. Great tour because it was Kingdom Come, Dokken, Scorpions, Metallica, Van Halen.
Ooh.
That's a nice day. Like all the 4 bands previous played half hour, 45 minutes, hour 15, hour and a half.
Mm-hmm.
And they played all these songs, right? Van Halen gets up there last and they played for an hour and 20 minutes. And they probably played 8 songs wrapped around everyone having these really extended solo breaks. So they had, Michael Anthony playing a lousy bass solo. Alex Van Halen playing a weird, he'd been high for 13 years and he was finally sober and I don't think he understood what he was doing anymore. Played that for a while. And then Sammy Hagar plays, can't remember the song. It wasn't I Can't Drive 55. It was Eagles Wings or I can't remember.
On the Wings of Eagles?
I think that's it. Yes. And plays that by himself. And then Eddie comes out and plays 15 minutes of solo noodling, whatever. And watching it, even at 16, I'm like, this is not a band at all.
Yeah.
These are disparate parts touring as Van Halen, but it's just an indulgent kind of playing with themselves type thing. Like it's just, just watching it. I'm like,
it was,
this is a
van masturbation, basically, is what I'm trying to say.
I'm like, I don't get it. But then if you kind of look into the psychology of how Eddie controls everything.
Yeah.
How he's reticent to release any new music. Because even in the record that came out in 2011, Different Kind of Truth with David Lee Roth, all those songs were written around the time of Van Halen 1 and 2.
Yeah.
They just re-recorded them. So he's afraid to to put that out there, but he still wants just maniacal control of what's going on.
I've always kind of wondered if he's not one of those people who, I forget what it's called in the world of obsessive compulsive people.
Yeah.
Obsessive compulsive people to begin with, but there's a certain condition with people who are obsessive compulsive where they have to do the same thing over and over and over again to try to make it perfect. And I've always kind of wondered if he's not somewhere within that, where he just keeps saying to himself, okay, I've made all these songs, but now I want to go back and I want to play this again and see if I can get it a little bit better.
Right.
And I want to go back and play it again and see if I can get it a little bit better. And if he's not the type of person who's taking his own music and just beating it over the head because he's like, I need to play this song absolutely perfectly and I can't rest until it's that way.
Right.
And that's why he's not making anything new. That's why he doesn't want to push boundaries anymore, because he's like, I have to get what I've already made perfect before I move on.
Right. And he's not a good editor either. He will tweak it. He'll never get to the point where he walks away.
Yeah.
Where you say, listen, I could edit this for the rest of my life, but it's not going to make it any better. In fact, it's probably going to make it worse.
Has he ever done any music for a George Lucas movie? Because that could be a problem.
As far as I know, they only did one soundtrack.
Twister,
right? Yeah.
The soundtrack to that movie sounded like it was probably a disaster to record.
And that was right around the time. That would have been 96. So soon on the heels of that wonderful experience
was when Sammy Hagar left.
Do they go back into the studio and record one gem of a record called Van Halen III with Gary Cherone?
Oh, God.
And I'm being sarcastic as hell because it is garbage. So do yourself a favor out there, people, and don't listen to that record.
Yeah, you can skip Van Halen 3. I got to tell you this little story about how I first heard Van Halen. A cousin of mine who I did not have a very close relationship with came to stay with my parents for a couple of days with his brother and sister. And Van Halen Best of Volume 1 had just come out. So that would have been 97 maybe? 96? I forget the exact year. But he had that. And he was listening to it and he's like, do you want to listen to this? And I was like, oh yeah. He put the headphones on me and I was just like, oh, this is so cool. So I went and bought Van Halen Best of Volume 1.
Okay.
I had no idea that there were 2 different lead singers on that album. Like, because, I mean, I was like 12 years old and the internet didn't exist. So I was like, these guys are so great, and then as I got older, I'm like, yeah, Van Halen, they're great. And people are like, oh, Eddie Van Halen. I'm like, oh, it's named after a guy. Oh, cool. All right. Yeah. Alex Van Halen. Well, is his name Eddie or is it Alex?
There's two of them.
There's two of them. They're brothers.
What?
Oh, okay, cool. And then, well, do you like Sammy Hagar or David Lee Roth? And I'd be like, yeah, they're great. And then it's like all this starts coming out and it's like, oh my God, these are two different. I could not tell them apart on that album.
Oh.
And like I had never registered with me that these were two different people singing. Like, so it all blended together to me. And I was just like, yeah, they're great. I love them.
You just thought he went through the change or something. Like, why does he sound so much different?
Maybe he smokes a lot, I mean, maybe drugs did a number on his vocal cords. Who knows? But so not until
hello, baby.
Hello, baby. I can't drive 55. But until, maybe 2000-ish was when I was like, oh, okay. I'm starting to see this information and see this whole picture now that they're very different eras in this band.
I don't think you're alone. I think there's plenty of listeners out there that probably had the similar experience. Like it's good that we have a different sort of viewpoint about it.
Where I was going with this, though, was even in that state, I knew just from going to like the record store and being like, people would be like, oh, what do you like to listen to? Oh, Van Halen. You're like, oh, okay, cool. Don't buy Van Halen 3. I even knew. I couldn't tell the two original singers apart. Don't buy Van Halen 3. They got a new singer and it's horrible.
There should have just been a sign at the record store.
There should have been.
Just
don't bother. Van Halen 3.
Just don't. Save yourself 65 minutes. 65 minutes?
Oh, God.
Like 1984 is 37 minutes long. You know what the Van Halen 3, there, right? The CD.
Exactly. Yeah. I was about to say, it went from being, we have to fit this on vinyl to we have to fit this on CD.
To we can fill a CD. Yeah, we have to fit this on vinyl. We can fill a CD. So they're like, oh, I can write up to 79 minutes worth of music before it has to be a double CD. Gary, vamp. What? Oh, no, this is going to go poorly. It's just so bad.
It's unfortunate too, because like I said, getting ready for this episode is the first time I've listened to Van Halen 3.
You're welcome.
Thank you for that. Suggesting that. And I started listening to it and I was like, did I get the wrong album? Is this some like cover band or is this some weird? No, it really is just not good. And it's unfortunate too, because I mean, Gary Cherone, like I started, looking at his history when he was with Extreme, they had a lot of hits. And I don't know. It's like you said, I'm drawing a blank on the guitar player for Extreme's name.
Nuno Bettencourt.
Nuno Bettencourt. Such a common name. Yep. I should have had that right on the tip of my tongue.
Your tongue. I know.
But
Nuno.
Anyways, I know you were saying that they were successful because of him. Mm-hmm. But I mean, obviously, Gary Cherone had something to do with it. He was singing.
He's got a good voice.
Yeah. It just, he had no material here with Van Halen 3. It was just
like honesty time. I had the stupid record. Like Van Halen 3 came out and I'm like, well, I must have it. I will buy it because I'm a Van Halen fan. I'm going to buy it. And I played it one time in my CD player. I'm like, holy crap, that's bad. I mean, I don't even remember the name of the stupid song, but there's a song on there that Eddie plays piano and sings lead on. Ooh. And it's atrocious. And I'm like, oh, and it's sad. It made me sad to hear it because it's like, oh, well, this kind of cinches it. Then we're just going to see them playing state fairs in like 10 years because that's just such an awful record. And when after I converted everything to digital, I sold most of my CDs. I kept the ones that I think will be collectible or ones that had special meaning to me. And then I sold the rest of them in garage sale, like $1 a piece. I'm like, get rid of them. I'm like, I couldn't get rid of that thing. Like, I just want to throw it around the garage like a Frisbee because no one's going to buy this. Is it still
haunting you somewhere? Is it like in a drawer
it's probably
somewhere?
Under that refrigerator or something. It'll show up when we move. We're like, oh, here it is.
It'll make it. When you retire to Jamaica, it'll make its way there with you.
Like,
you'll just be going through some box like, where do we pack the cookbooks? And oh God, no!
Try to throw it into the ocean and it'll wash up.
Come back a month later.
Damn it! Can't get rid of it. It's like a bad penny. So
avoid Van Halen 3. There's no reason to
Exactly.
listen to it. Just remember the good times.
So that's Van Halen. That's their change for you. You have input on that, please share with us.
Oh, please do.
Everybody has some Van Halen input, and I don't mean to knock the hits. Like the reason I don't need to go to them is because Jump, Panama, Hot for Teacher, those songs are so good in their
and
own
they're so
right.
Iconic,
right? You don't need to even discuss them because they're huge and they're well written. And so I gravitate more towards the songs that probably get lesser coverage that people don't listen to, especially in a digital age. People are probably skipping right over those, just playing Jump, Panama, over and over again. So would you like to move on to Journey?
Journey.
Yep.
You picked what might be the most well-known rock album of all time.
Correct.
Escape.
Like,
I don't even know. Don't Stop Believin' has made like at least 2 comebacks in my lifetime. It was a hit in the 80s when it came out.
Mm-hmm.
It was a hit right around 2000.
Because of The Sopranos?
That was a little bit later.
Oh.
It was a hit around, 3 comebacks. It was a hit right around 2000 for whatever reason. It was a hit because of The Sopranos when that ended with that, horrible "Don't Stop," and there's just a black screen and everybody got all butt sore about it.
Worst ending ever.
It made me laugh because
I didn't watch the show, so I don't care.
At the time, I had a manager who was so into it. He'd have viewing parties every week and stuff, and he threw this huge party for the finale. And
his life ruined?
It was ruined. He was depressed for several weeks afterwards and got heavily into drinking. and then a few years later, Glee brought it back again. Glee. I don't know why I said that with a British accent. Glee, the TV show, brought it back again, which was a nightmare for me at the time because I worked I worked tech for a lot of talent shows. And every single person that was coming in was like, "Hi, my name's Sarah, and today I'm going to play the piano for you, and this is Don't Stop Believin' by Journey." Dun, 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 dun. And everyone's like, "Okay, that's really great." And then the next person, "Hi, my name's Thomas, and I'm going to play the violin for you. This is Don't Stop Believin' by Journey."
Did someone play it on the theremin? That would be awesome.
That would be amazing. I guarantee there's a cover out there somewhere, but
theremin cover.
The theremin cover of Don't Stop Believin' will be in the notes, the show notes, if I can find it. But
so let's give it a little background on Journey.
Okay.
Right? So Steve Perry, not the original lead singer. Greg Raleigh was the original lead singer. And when Steve Perry joined, Greg Raleigh became the keyboardist for the next several albums. They've had a rotating cast of characters. You have Ross Valerie on bass, Jonathan Cain on keyboards for this record, for Escape. Neil Schon, who's been with the band since the very beginning. He's the only member to be with the band the whole time.
Oh, really?
Neil Schon. And Steve Smith, by the way, absolutely legendary drummer. That was the main core for like the big records for Frontier and Escape, that 2 or 3 album block in the early 80s. That was Journey's kind of big coming out party, right? So Steve Smith eventually would leave to go play Jazz Fusion, a band called Vital Information. Bass player was replaced briefly by Randy Jackson, Dog.
You kids may know him from American Idol.
That's correct. And Dean Castronovo replaced Steve Smith on drums and stayed with through the 2000s, and then Steve Smith returned back to the band in 2016. So Steve Perry is the one everybody knows, right? He's there for the largest record. Don't Stop Believing sold 12 million copies, and that record alone is the height of their collective power. Don't Stop Believing, Who's Crying Now, Open Arms, and my personal favorite, Stone in Love, which I still think is
such a great song.
Great song.
Certified 9 times platinum by the RIA.
Isn't that crazy?
9 times.
9 times.
9 times.
At one point, this record was named the #1 album-oriented rock album of all time.
I would fully believe that.
Atari even made a video game for the 2600 console called Journey Escape. Like how How big is this? You're having a video game.
You're cross promoting into a video game.
And just so you know, everybody that bought that record was on the right track. And so are we. Rolling Stone hated this record. Hated it.
That's funny. I wrote that same note.
And I quote, they could be any fluff-brained sessioneers with a singer that sounds like a eunuch. Come on. And right away, that should tell you we are on the right track.
Right. Rolling Stone hates it. It must be
It
great.
must be good. Rolling Stone hates it.
I should have looked up what they said about Van Halen 3. They probably loved it.
You didn't want it. No, they didn't.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
It's not as funny that way.
But this record was arena rock.
Yes.
You take your REO Speedwagon, you can take your Styx, you can take all those bands.
Boston.
This was the height, the apex of arena rock, and everybody loved it and still does. Don't Stop Believin' is your number one karaoke song, probably.
Oh, by far, I'm sure.
Right? Open Arms, still probably the greatest make-out song in the history of music ever written. And it was fantastic. And they had a couple more records with Steve Perry, and then Steve Perry wanted to do his own thing.
Well, Steve Perry fired a couple members of the band.
He
decided Journey is mine.
He was a bit of a diva, right? And that's kind of where you're at with the front man. You can control the way the band proceeds. Like, you started thinking about how good that record is. And you're like, I listened to it the other night again, and there's, I think, 8 songs on it. I think there's 8, maybe 9. Is there 8?
Let me see here. I have them all written down.
You have the track list?
I do. Don't Stop Believin'.
Yeah.
Stone in Love.
Stone in Love. Yeah.
Who's Crying Now?
Yeah.
Keep on Running.
Oh, yeah.
Still They Ride. Escape. Lay It Down. Dead or Alive. Mother, Father, and Open Arms.
Okay. So there's a dead spot there that probably, 75% of the people that listen to Journey nowadays have no idea what like 3 or 4 of those tracks even are.
On the vinyl, those are all B-side tracks. So, because I think the B-side is Escape, Lay It Down, Dead or Alive, Mother, Father, and Open Arms.
Open Arms, everybody knows.
Open Arms, everybody knows.
Right.
But what's crazy to me is that was the closer for this album. And it's after a bunch of songs that nobody remembers. So it must have gotten a lot of radio play.
And it's an odd closer.
Yeah. It's slow and it's...
I mean, it's a great song, but I don't know why you close a record.
Yeah, it's just weird on the album. But please continue.
So I was thinking about why so many people are attached to this record. And to me, this is one of those absolute memory albums that every big hit is probably attributed to a very specific memory in your life, especially if you grew up around that time listening to it. So I would have been 9 when it came out, but I had an older brother and sister who were 16 and 17 when this album was released. So I know the very specific memory-oriented thing. And one of the things the reviewer says is, it's the lyrics are shitty and juvenile and blah 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 blah. And I'm like, don't you want it has a youthful romance feel to it. In my notes I wrote, you don't always want or need to be challenged by a record or a song. Like, sometimes reminiscence and memory is what you want. And these are the songs you want to belt out in your car while you're driving, singing along to, because they remind you of a very specific place and time. And whether or not they're the best songs ever written is irrelevant. And that's why I think you get the retrospective review, because Rolling Stone then says in 2001, well, this is the greatest record of all time. And it's like, yes, because you have hindsight now.
Yeah.
But at the time, they were well-written pop/rock songs. Legendary songs, and what sold it was Steve Perry's voice.
Yeah.
Emotive is an understatement. He has, besides Robert Plant, he has the most recognizable lead singer voice of all time.
I will fully agree with that.
Listening to it the other day, I don't find myself listening to Journey on a regular basis. I just don't anymore. I mean, if I hear it, it's usually because I'm listening to Sirius XM.
Yeah.
And they'll play Stone in Love or something on Classic Rewind. So I'll hear it. But listening to that whole record, it's like honey through your speakers.
Mm.
It's so pretty. And you're like, you get captivated. You're like, oh my gosh, it's just, there's a richness. And it's like, and I can do without, like, the keyboard. Some of the piano shit is so like hokey and clearly era defining. 1981, you can go just throw a dart at it and go, that's 1981. But his voice takes you someplace completely different. And I absolutely love that record. So you have things to say.
Oh, I was going to say it's a phenomenal record. It's like I said, I really think that it is probably one of the most iconic rock records for sure of the 80s, probably of all of like the whole 1970 to 1990, that rock era where rock kind of grew up and then kind of faded away into other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it definitely like, I mean, I don't know anybody that doesn't know Don't Stop Believin'. You know, I mean, it's, you know, I know people that are really like into only hip hop that know Don't Stop Believin'. I know people that don't like rock and roll that know Don't Stop Believin'. It is just such an iconic.
The hip hop people have probably sampled it at one point or another. It's good music.
Yeah. It's very pleasing to listen to.
It is.
And it's like you said, how do you replace Steve Perry? Because it's like you were just talking about, you know, he has such an iconic voice, and it's like, how do you go about replacing him? So I didn't know Journey actually disbanded in 1987.
Yeah.
They were just like, we're done.
Yeah.
For what, 20 years almost, 18 years, something like that.
No, well, record wise, they didn't make a new record for 20 years, but they were touring in the 90s.
Okay.
With they had another lead singer, Steve Augury.
Yeah.
And then
who was with the band until like 2006
or less than, just a little bit less than that. He shredded his vocal cords.
Yeah, he had like, some kind of a problem.
Yeah, right? And then Greg Soto joined the band briefly, and then they canned him like almost immediately for, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it was less than a year, right?
Yeah. And then they're still searching. So Neil Schon, you know, that whole 87 to like, I think it was 87 to like 93. Somewhere in that vein, and hopefully if you're out there, somebody correct me, because I probably have the years wrong, but it's like 87 to 93. It's Neil Schon and Ross Valerie or Jonathan Cain joined a band called Bad English with John Waite, that in the hair metal vein. So they had a couple of big hits in like the late 80s, early 90s when hair metal was like doing its swan song right before grunge hit.
Yeah. Interesting.
So that's what they were doing around that time, but they decided, you know, after a couple of good hits and that died, you go back to the flagship. You go back to what got you here, even though Neil Schon could have played with anyone. Yeah. Neil Schon was actually in Santana when he was like 15. He's like just a guitar prodigy. He's been around forever. Like that group of guys had to reform and go, okay, are we still going to be Journey or we're not going to be Journey? So they tried to with the other guys, and, you know, you get to 2007 and they're trying to figure out what they're going to do. And lo and behold, here comes Arnel Pineda, right? So he was playing in a Filipino cover band called The Zoo. And thanks to the internet and YouTube,
they found him,
right? They found him. They found him playing Journey songs and blown away by the similarities between him and Steve Perry. And they had basically auditioned him, like a really intense audition, and joined the band in 2007 and started touring in 2008. So they got together and they recorded a record called Revelation, which released in 2008. That record went platinum.
Yeah.
And so you start to wonder, like arena rock, that kind of heat and serve rock and roll music, 2008, it's pretty much dead. Yet you have 1 million selling records still from a band that at that moment is 34 years old.
Yeah.
Somewhere around there. What would have happened if that album had been released in 1981? If the Pineda record, it replaces Escape.
Ooh.
Because listening to that record, it's really good.
Oh, it's fantastic.
It is really good. And, you know, it's not going to get the play like it would have gotten 81.
Yeah.
And then the other question is it too much on par because he sounds so much like Steve Perry?
Yeah.
Was this intentional for it to be Journey being kind of a cover band of itself?
Well, what I think is the craziest part about this album is that it was a 2-disc album. So the first disc, all new songs. I think they're all new anyways. Second disc is Arnel Pineda singing old Journey songs.
Yeah, on the tour.
And they are...
most of them recorded here in Vegas.
Yeah, and they're fantastic. They sound great. They're different.
Yeah, the arrangements are a little different.
So good.
But he's scary close.
Yes.
And I think he's great with his original stuff, but it's almost disconcertingly close to Steve Perry. Part of me almost wishes that they had disbanded Journey and called themselves something else and toured as something else. Obviously,
like you think.
Obviously, you're selling tickets based on name recognition, and people want to hear "Open Arms" and "Don't Stop Believing" and all those songs. That's what they want to hear. But as musicians, they're like, I want my new material to be appreciated as much as my old material.
Yeah.
Or else, why am I making it?
So I wonder if there's like, do you feel like there's a shadow sort of hanging over them?
Oh, absolutely.
Because they're making good music.
Yeah.
But it's new Journey. It's not we're a new band that's making good music. It's new Journey.
Yes. I think that's exactly what it is. And we'll cover that with the next band because the next band had so many permutations. It's easy to just say, oh, that's just another version of Yes. That's another version of Yes. Yeah. But they're all Yes. This doesn't feel like a new version of Journey. It still feels like they're trying to be Journey, but trying to get away with, but we could still kind of use the karaoke thing. Like we could still use it as a cover band.
Yeah.
And then here's our new stuff because he sounds so much like the old stuff. I think he's a fantastic singer. He's so good.
He is, and it's a great album.
Right.
Like I had not, again, this is another one that never heard it until we started doing this. And I was like, oh yeah, I remember that from quite a few years ago when they replaced the singer and everybody was like, oh yeah, he's this Arnel Pineda is this Filipino guy and he came in and took over for Steve Perry. And it was like, oh yeah, that's kind of interesting. I wonder why I never listened to that. And now I'm sad that I didn't because it's great. It's
good. And that one, by Revelation, they released another album, 2011, I believe. That's not nearly as good. And Neil Schon kind of took over and wanted to make it more straight ahead or less straight ahead and more adventurous. So it's almost drifting into prog land. The compositions are longer. The lyrics are a little vaguer and not, people get used to Journey talking about making out with the chick or streetlight people or, kind of simple.
Yeah.
And he wanted to push it a new direction and it just crashed. Just did not do well at all because people want to hear the formula.
Yeah.
And it's difficult when you're that established as that. Like there are other bands that like a Yes, like Rush, like Genesis, like Floyd, that there was no common line. It was always, we're doing something different every single time. So the fan base grows to expect something different. And actually, if you do what you did before, it's almost disappointing.
Exactly. People get pissed off.
Right. But
they're like, wait, you already did this on the 2 albums ago.
Right. But if you go see Def Leppard or Speedwagon or whatever, or Journey, you want to see something similar to what you've been listening to. It's just the beast.
Well, imagine going to see Journey and they don't play Don't Stop Believing.
It'd be a riot.
Right? People would be pissed. They'd be like, is it the encore song? Like, no, we're not playing it tonight. Good night, everybody. And
it's like, I want my $18 back.
The place would get burnt down.
I want my State Fair money back. No, they're not playing the State Fair. They're still big. I joke. But like,
have you ever seen him in concert?
Journey? Yeah. With Steve Perry.
Oh, that's lucky.
And it was, it was cool. You can't conceptualize it, what I saw then to what I know is possible now. Like, because then the lights were cool, but it was just like a bunch of banks of lights,
Yeah. Flash,
right.
flash.
Big deal. But it was like a cool, loud rock show that they played all the songs that I wanted to hear.
Yeah.
Right. And it was an entertaining thing. And the solos were fantastic. And Steve Perry sounded like Steve Perry. He sounds like the record. He didn't sound processed or anything. It was just like, holy moly.
Yeah.
right? So that voice in a arena that holds 20,000 people, it's like just
so
like
cool.
Woof. Yeah, it's good, and I'd like to see him with Arnel.
Yeah.
I think it'd be interesting. I know they're here all the time. I think it'd be interesting to see how that translates. Like, does it? Because I watched the DVD with him performing, and it's something, because you can close your eyes and listen to him and go, there's very little discernible difference here. And you open your eyes and he's, strutting around like a 5'5" little guy, just like bouncing around. And you're like, wow, he's got a lot of energy.
I was trying to remember. I know that I saw Journey in concert, but it was with it was either Steve Agary or Jeff Scott Soto. I forget who, because it would have been around that time, like 2006, 2007. It was definitely before 2008. They were, okay live when I saw them, but it didn't sound, it wasn't like that arena sound. It wasn't like that iconic. It's like, okay, this sounds different. What has changed?
Did you see him in a theater?
I saw them in an outdoor amphitheater.
Okay. And I think that has a lot to do with it.
Yeah.
The sound, like, this be off topic, or not really off topic, but Speedwagon sticks, like, in an arena.
Oh, yeah.
It's a totally different band. It's a totally different sound. Like, that cavernous sound,
reverb
lends itself to all these kind of open spaces in the songs. And Heather and I went down to Phoenix in February and saw Bob Seger at the Talking Stick Arena down there. And this guy's 72 years old, but the sound fills that space so well. That's what I want to hear. It's big, it's loud.
Yeah.
And it takes over and kind of sweeps you away with it. And that's the way Journey was when I saw him all those years ago.
See, that's cool.
Yeah.
That is one thing that does kind of always suck, is I always feel like I missed, because I love a lot of like rock, and I feel like I missed that era by about 10 years.
Yeah.
Like, had I been 10 years older, I would have been like, oh yeah, I got to go see these guys in concert. I got to go see this in concert. I got to go see, Journey and Van Halen and, in concert. Whereas the age that I was at, you had fantastic recordings of all of them, but
But those bands, like when grunge hit, even that punk kind of stuff in the mid 90s, they weren't writing songs for a 20,000 seat arena. These bands were writing specifically knowing they were going to play them in an arena of that size.
Yeah.
And they wrote songs that would lend themselves to that experience. And they didn't do that in the 90s. They expected to be, I would imagine, in theaters and small venues and stuff. So it doesn't, when they would take like Nirvana or another band and put them in an arena, that did not translate the same way.
Yeah.
Because it's so raucous. It's so already really full without spaces in the music to allow it to breathe. Yeah. So it didn't sound the same. It sounded like very chaotic instead of sweet and just, beautiful. You have any more notes on Journey?
No, that's it on Journey.
That's all you got on Journey?
Please go listen to both those albums if you never have. Escape, fantastic album. I said fantastic again, so I'm going to try that again. Escape, super great album.
And Revelation, also super great.
Super great.
Just
super great.
Different era, different times.
That was another one. I same note. I was like, how do I pick between these two? They're a different sound, but they're both very good.
I don't think I could pick against Escape.
It is definitely, iconic.
Like if I could I just pick on Stone in Love by itself, because that song is so good. Mm-hmm. Like it's done. Not saying Revelation isn't a great record, because it is.
Yeah, but picking between the two.
Right. So that's Journey, everybody. So tell us how much you hate Journey.
So, hate mail.
Right. Tell us how much.
Info at the talk. Or I'm sorry.
No.
Send your hate mail to info@audiojudo.com.
Or you can send it to the Talk Around Show.
You can send it to info@thetalkaroundshow.com as well. Or former podcast, maybe future podcast.
Right?
Who knows?
You just tell us that Journey sucks, or I suck.
Yeah.
Or I don't know what I'm talking about. And Kevin Collin from REO Speedwagon is much better singer than Steve Perry, and I don't know what I'm talking about. So that's what you should do. You should tell me that.
So yes,
Kevin Curran. Damn, Curran.
Yes, the band.
Yes, the band.
Yes,
not yes the affirmative.
Well, it is also the affirmative, but yes, the band is what we're going to talk about now.
Yes, we are.
Is there is there an award for the most turnover in members of a band? Because yes might win it.
It's a lot.
It's a lot.
It's a lot. It's a rotating cast of characters over the course of the past 51 years.
So also I did notice we're going to talk about 3 Yes albums.
51 years.
51 years. Yes, the Yes album.
Yes, we're talking about 3 records. The Yes album.
Drama.
90125. 90125.
And I will notice that last week when we kind of did a lead into this, I did say I mentioned Rick Wakeman and that I was going to do the whole episode with one hand in the air.
Yeah.
Rick Wakeman when he's playing the keyboards. And then you picked 3 albums that Rick Wakeman was not on.
That may or may not have been intentional.
I kind of thought so. You didn't want to see me standing up for this whole thing like, yeah, I got one hand in the air.
Well, you didn't.
It's already tired.
You didn't wear your cape.
I did not wear my cape or my crown.
So. Well, then we can't do it.
It's okay.
If you had worn a cape, I would have just switched it all up.
Oh, good.
We were dealt with Tales of Topographic Oceans for another 3 hours.
I suppose that's okay.
So, yeah, rotating cast of characters over 51 years. So, guitarists, 4. Steve Howe, Trevor Rabin, Peter Banks, Billy Sherwood. Bass, only 2.
Oh, thank God.
Chris Squire, passed away in 2015.
Sad.
And Billy Sherwood. Vocals, John Anderson, Trevor Rabin, Trevor Horn, John Davidson. Drums, Bill Bruford, legend. And Alan White, also legend, played with George Harrison and did session work with pretty much everybody through the 70s. And then the vexing part, keyboards over the course of 51 years.
Probably 51 keyboardists.
Tony Kaye,
right?
Rick Wakeman, Pat Mraz, Jeff Downs, Eddie Jobson, Igor Koroshev, and Oliver Wakeman, Rick Wakeman's son.
Aha.
Right? So they have a song on the Yes album called Perpetual Change.
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly
that fits
what this band is. Perpetual Change. And I am a huge fan. We're going to start with the Yes album, obviously. Huge record for them for many different reasons. So this is 1971, right? They've already recorded 2 records up to now that were loaded with covers and very little original music.
Mm-hmm.
They were about to get dropped from their record label. They were just kind of not well received, kind of garbagey, right? So they go into the studio. They replace Peter Banks with Steve Howe. Steve Howe is the new guitarist for Yes at this moment. And all of a sudden, there's this magic. This is the classic Yes lineup, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is John Anderson on vocals, Chris Squire on bass, Steve Howe on guitar, Tony Kaye on keyboards. A lot of people will say Rick Wakeman, but I prefer Tony Kaye to Rick Wakeman.
Totally fine. I'll be honest with you. The only reason I know Rick Wakeman is because he's like a huge nerd. So
he is a big nerd.
Yeah.
This is the record that their harmonies are established in a huge way, which is what Yes will become defined by, is their vocal harmonies. Really high, almost falsetto vocal harmonies. Very little bass harmony at all. It's all really in the high register. Chris Squire's bass is just thumping throughout. Steve Howe comes along, super inventive guitarist, playing stuff that nobody had heard before, unique sounds, lots of effects. That this is 1971. There's not a lot of that stuff going on. He's bringing this whole different sound to it, right? John Anderson's high-pitched, esoteric, almost spiritual lyrics start to take hold on this record, which will come to define who they are, right? And here's a nice change of pace for you. Rolling Stone magazine loved this record.
Really?
Right?
Mind blown.
Right? Huge. This is the record that broke Yes. I've Seen All Good People.
Yes.
Right?
Fantastic song.
Yours Is No Disgrace. Starship Trooper. These were the songs that charted the next 10 years for Yes. This would be the formula they would utilize going forward with their harmonies, with this very fluid bass lines and stuff, very inventive guitar work.
Oh, well, I was going to say, I know that Starship Trooper is, like, a lot of people consider it one of the best, like, guitar songs ever written. I mean, it's frequently considered, at least top 10 on a lot of people's, the best guitar solos of all time. The top 483. Because they pick weird numbers for that kind of stuff for some reason.
Labor Day weekend.
Labor Day weekends. Classic
Rewind.
rock.
Playing back the top 500 songs of all time. Holy crap.
That's a lot. But
Who's
I know
gonna do that?
Starship Trooper ends up on those lists quite frequently.
Yeah, it's loaded with good songs. Clap is a great song, which is like the first kind of acoustic folk experiment for Steve Howe.
Oh, really? So that was the first time they had done a song that sounded like that?
Yeah. Right. And that's, again, see, because that's what you would define them by. So people are like, well, is it a prog band? It's a progressive band, or is it a folk band? The term that I like to use was classical rock band. Not a classic rock band, but a classical symphonic rock band.
All right.
Like because of the way they structured songs, because they were movements through their songs.
Yeah.
Like a piece of classical music, where they were self-referential. They were 8 minutes in. They were referencing themes from the beginning of the song, like you would in a classical piece of music. And that's, to me, that much different song. And everyone's like, well, it's the British sound. And I'm like, I don't know that you could lump a lot of other bands in with Yes.
Yeah.
They were very unique. And this was the record that set the table for the next decade, with Relayer and Tormato and Going for the One and Fragile and all these records that came out, Time and a Word, that were these huge pieces of music that had this through line that would reference itself back. So band goes through some minor changes through the 70s. John Anderson, Chris Squire, they're all there. They changed keyboardists a couple times. And then they finish a tour and get to 1980. And they start to talk about making a new record. A couple of guys in the band want to go in a different direction. They're kind of tired of the same similar sounding records. They want to do something else. The lead singer is like, that's what I want to do. I like the long pieces. I like the esoteric lyrics. I like the folk sound. The keyboardist is with him. So John Anderson and Rick Wakeman are like, we like the way this is working. And the other guys in the band are like, it's not, it's 1979, 1980. Music's changing. We need to adapt and change with it. So enter a convenient partnership. The managers of Yes, Atlantic Records, their manager, the guy that discovered them, Ahmet Erdogan, was the co-founder of Atlantic Records.
Okay.
So I don't know if you've seen Ray, the Ray Charles movie with Jamie Foxx.
Yes.
Curtis Armstrong, so Booger from Revenge of the Nerds, plays Ahmet Erdogan. He's his agent, essentially, because he founded Atlantic Records. So this guy is huge. He's super well known. So he's the founder, or he's managing Yes. And there's another band that you guys probably will be familiar with, who he's also managing, that released the first video on MTV. The Buggles, Video Killed the Radio Star, is the first video on MTV.
I heard them on my wireless back in 52, actually.
I bet you did. So he's, they're...
That was a horrible joke. I apologize to everyone listening.
They're managed by the same people.
Okay.
So Yes is recording, or back in the studio, just three of them, right? Two of the guys aren't there. They invite Trevor Horn and Jeff Downs, who are the Buggles, there's only two of them, to come down and like hang out for a while and just kind of jam. So they're like, yeah, okay, cool. So they start playing a song that they had that was like this really like 8-minute long song that they're like, this doesn't really work for the Buggles. We're like a 2 or 3 minute song band. But we have this long one, so we'll play it. And they started playing it. And Yes, absolutely loved it. And all of a sudden, they're basically getting contracts to join the band.
Oh, wow.
And they are now in Yes. So Trevor Horn, who's seen the video, people have seen the video for Video Killed the Radio Star. He's got the weird glasses on. He's just become the new lead singer
of
Yes.
Huh.
Jeff Downs became the new keyboardist for Yes. All of a sudden, it's Yes. So if you start listening to Drama, the high harmony is still there. It's still Chris Squire, who was the defining sound in the band with this high pitched harmony. You can't avoid it. The songs are a little more direct, a little less prog rocky and symphonic. And if you're like a Yes fan that doesn't know, if you're listening to it, it'd be very difficult for you to know that there was a huge change in singers at all, because there's a really similar sounding vocal pattern, and it almost kind of gets washed together. Sounds are similar, voices are similar. There's just something not quite the same. So the songs are a little more direct.
Okay.
And if you start to listen to Drama, like the second song on the record, Man in a White Car, it's not a Yes song at all. It sounds like the Buggles.
It very much does.
It's like a 1.5 or 2 minute long song. It does not sound.
It's a weird standout on this album too. Like,
right?
Listening to this, I had never heard Drama before, so I kind of went into it blind.
Right? Machine Messiah is a great song.
Oh, it's a fantastic song. And it opening, it sounded more like it was going to be like a heavy metal song. And I was like, wow, what the hell is this?
Right.
But then White Car comes along and it's like, this doesn't feel the same as anything that I'd heard from Yes before.
No.
So, but there, I mean, when you replace band members like that constantly, it creates that evolving sound. I mean, that sounds stupid when I say it out loud. If you replace a person, things are different. But that's true.
I don't get it.
But when you're replacing people with, such high caliber musicians that can come in and say, okay, this is what you're doing right now. This is what we want to add to it. And then they work with one another and they create something completely new and different. It's amazing.
Well, that's one of the things that's always been the standout for Yes, is that they're consummate, huge musicians.
Yes.
They're all talented in their own right. It's just a magic kind of soup that gets thrown together, right? And you hear all this fantastic noise. And I remember listening to Drama somewhere in the 80s and not getting it, because I had listened to all the old Yes stuff before that, obviously, and it didn't make sense to me. It was almost too far outside the box. And like they're trying to explore new musical directions, clearly. Like they want to branch out. They want to try something new. They have these two young pups, basically, who are riding pretty high.
Yeah.
And they just scoop them up and they record this record pretty much in no time and then yank them out on a tour. By the way, you're being asked to play and sing all these Yes songs over the past 10 years.
Yeah.
That are defining, just like Arnel Pineda from Journey, basically being asked to do the same thing. Although he volunteered to do that, Trevor Horn was like, I don't know if I want to do this, and was ready to turn the whole thing down until he realized, when's the next time I'm going to be asked to sing in Yes?
Yeah.
So how do you pass that up, right? You don't. So listening to it as a kid, and even now when I listen to it again, like there was something just not quite right. Like they weren't ready for that change until enter a shaggy-haired South African fella named Trevor Rabin, who all of a sudden kind of landed in their lap. So Trevor Rabin, been a musician forever by now. He wants to write in LA. He wants to write songs. He wants to record some solo stuff. People don't like it. He ends up getting connected through the same guy, through their manager, Ahmet Erdogan, to kind of jam with these guys. So he starts talking to Chris Squire and all the guys in Yes that aren't John Anderson, because he's always the outlier. Mm-hmm. And they're like, wow, this is really cool. Let's make a record. So they became a band, but not Yes. Now they're a band called Cinema.
Oh.
So it's all the guys in Yes. So it's Chris Squire and Tony Kaye and Alan White and Steve Howe, Trevor Rabin, forming this new band called Cinema. Right? So they got together and they're writing and they're playing along, and there's something missing. Ahmet Erdogan says to Chris Squire, they're like, you need to have a hit. We have no hit singles. We need a hit. You need to have one. And he's like, I agree. We need to have one. So he ends up writing, Trevor Rabin ends up pulling all these ideas out and landing on Owner of a Lonely Heart is the first thing that they kind of settle on.
Okay.
And they realize how good John Anderson's voice would blend with the band. So they ask him to come in and sing. And Ahmet Erdogan says, oh, that sounds like Yes is back together. So all of a sudden, this record that they had recorded as a band called Cinema just became the next Yes record,
album.
which would happen again 2 more times down the road.
Because of course it would. Why
Right.
not?
Because you're capitalizing on what you have, right? So they have this 90210 90125.
It's hard to say not say 90210, isn't it?
Right? It's their first and only number one album. No, number one song on Owner of a Lonely Heart. First and only number one song.
If someone was like, what did the 1980s sound like? I would play Owner of a Lonely Heart.
Right?
Because it is the song that like just the weird like stings in it and the like all of that to me is like the perfect embodiment of 1980s music as a whole.
Right.
And it came in 1981. Came early. Was it 81 or 83?
83.
83, I'm sorry. But it came so early in the 80s. And it defined, it always makes me wonder, were they ahead of the curve and it defined the rest of the 80s? Or were they kind of perceiving what was going to happen and then just recording it earlier than everybody else?
I think it's the former, not the latter.
You think it influenced all those people that came after it?
Because these were almost all, that record was almost all Trevor Rabin.
Okay.
Those were all his song ideas that he brought to the table. Obviously their ideas were added in, but his song ideas are all over this thing. It could have easily been a solo record by him. Easily. It's so much more pop based than anything else they did. There's a ton of other big changes. Like this is the first record going back 12 years that the album cover wasn't designed by Roger Dean. Okay. So Roger Dean was like the godfather of album paintings. He did landscapes. He even sued James Cameron because the floating islands in Avatar were so closely related to what he had done on all these album covers, because he had all these floating like islands in the sky type thing. So he's like, that's exactly what I paint. Like, where are you getting this from? So he sued him. He lost, but still.
That's unfortunate.
Right. So Trevor Horn, who was the lead singer for Drama, was brought back to be the producer for 90125. Because that's much more a role that fit him as opposed to like a front man. So the family and how this weaves together, and always has always been this fluid band that you can never really keep track of. Like an album that came out in 1990, I think it was 91. They had a record called Union, and it was essentially John Anderson, Bill Bruford, Rick Wakeman, and Steve Howe recorded their own stuff for a band called Anderson, Bruford, Wakeman, Howe. And it's really original. Really original. Right? And Yes was out recording with Trevor Rabin and Chris Squire. They were recording all these new songs. And they're like, well, they're so much related to one another. Let's take all of the songs, put them on one record, and just call it Yes Union. And we'll just merge them together. So that record has like 17 songs on it, and it's such a weird disparate, because you have like these 4-minute pop song and then a 9-minute weaving kind of weirdo trippy thing, and then you got a 2-minute acoustic guitar song, and it's like all over the place. But I mean, they're a band that's done really well at capitalizing on the name, on who they are, to like keep pushing product, basically.
Okay.
Like, this is Yes. Well, is it? Well, it's a version of Yes.
We say that it is.
So it is.
Here it is.
Right. And when I saw them in the 80s, I saw them in the early 90s, and there's such a different experience every time, because they have 22 albums, I think, something like that. Huge catalog. You can pull from anywhere, and you never know exactly what you're going to get, but it's always kind of a journey, because there's so many moving parts. There's so many different elements to that band, so many creative elements to that band. There was always one like anchor, and that was Chris Squire on bass, who was there through everything and kind of ran the band. And he was a genius at pretty much everything that he did to run the band. He was like the Eddie Van Halen, but he had a clear vision. for what he wanted the band to be. So they were inducted into the Hall of Fame, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Fuck Rolling Stone, but they were inducted into the Hall of Fame in I want to say 2015 or 16, and Geddy Lee, bass player for Rush, inducted them essentially into the Hall of Fame, and also filled in on bass.
Oh, that's cool.
And for him, because there's an article about him talking about his best, like his favorite 5 records of all time. Number 1 record on his list is the Yes album, because his hero as a 19-year-old kid was Chris Squire. So here he is, as at this point a 62-year-old man, playing his idol's stuff to induct him into the Hall of Fame.
Wow.
And he's like, I performed in front of 250,000 people in Brazil. I've never been more nervous than that moment right there. Like, don't F up your idol's song, because they played Roundabout. And it's like, and they play Yours Is No Disgrace. And he's like, I have to nail these parts. And he would get ready for tours, but he said he practiced for months for these 2 songs because he didn't want to embarrass their legacy. Yeah. So,
well, I mean, that's nuts, because the entire weight of their entire musical history is on your shoulders while you're playing that.
That's no big deal, right?
Right? Yeah, you screw this up and everybody's just going to be like, yes, not very good anymore because you fucked up their song.
You screwed everything up, you jackass. So, yeah. So that's the long and short of I could go on for hours, unfortunately.
I know you could. That's why I took very few notes on Yes.
But I'm not going to. I'm not going to go on for hours because I want other people to feedback. I want other people to be able to have a chance to listen to these records and soak it in.
And tell us what you think about them.
Please tell us what you think. Chris, I know you're out there. I know you're listening. I know you're going to tell me what you think about it. I know you're going to tell me where I screwed up. And there's probably a good couple places. And that's okay. I encourage that feedback.
I guess, should we wrap this up with what conclusion can we draw from all 3 of these situations? Van Halen, Journey, Yes.
Conclusions, huh?
Conclusions. Because I'll tell you what my conclusion is.
Please tell me.
I don't think it fucking matters who's playing the music as long as you enjoy it.
Right. And I was just about to write down. I was in the middle of writing that down. Music is subjective.
Yeah.
And it's what you attach to it, what import you give to it, how it makes you feel. And if you want to listen to 12 hours of country and Western, then
the 2 types of music,
right? Then you should. And I know I've said in the past that a lot of new music is crap, and I'm going to hold to that. A lot of new music is crap. However, if you enjoy listening to it, then good for you. I just don't think it's very good, but you can think it's very good, and that's fine. And one of the things I know, I had a long discussion with my wife the other night about how I think other people should listen to music, and that I impart or want to force how I perceive something on to someone else. And she pointed out how that's really incorrect, that people listen to music for their own reasons, and you can't say they listen to it like this because you do. They're going to have their own reasons to listen to music, and if they interpret something differently, then that's okay. And that's important that I realize and recognize that there's many different ways to interpret the things that we listen to, and this is just two guys' opinions about stuff. But really, my whole goal is to get the conversation started.
Yeah.
Is for people to talk about music, because it's a very important part of all of our lives. And people listen to stuff all the time, while they're running, while they're working, while they're driving, while they're doing whatever. So have the conversation and share music as much as possible. Like, it's different. There's no Napster anymore, so you can't get in trouble. You can just send a link about Spotify and go, hey, listen to this. This is really cool. And open the dialogue up and listen to new things that might be outside of your comfort zone.
New to you, especially.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't necessarily need to be
exactly new to you.
Time-wise, it needs to be new to you. I mean, we're covering some of the most classic albums. I mean, a few episodes ago we did Houses of the Holy. That's one of the most classic albums. If you're somebody who likes classic rock, you've heard that album before. Mm-hmm. But there's a whole bunch of people out there, hopefully listening to this, who haven't, or who have heard one song from it or something. Go back and listen to the album, see how it all fits together. See, be like, oh, okay, I have never heard this from beginning to end before. Take 45 minutes of your life and listen to it and see what you think about it. And maybe you hate it. Maybe you love it. Who cares? Listen to it so and you can share it with other people.
Yeah. Art for art's sake, like he was just saying, we covered some popular records today, maybe not so popular in your frame of mind, but
Van Halen 3.
Oh, garbage. But I know.
Do you need a trash can?
Booger throw up. But then I know the next one we're going to talk about, which is Kyle's choice, is not a popular record.
No.
So there you go. We're going to talk about something that isn't so popular, and it'll probably be new to you. And it's even new to me. So I'm looking forward to some research about it. You want to talk about what it is?
The band is called Dirty Projectors. They kind of have a little bit of a rotating roster of people as well. We're going to do their newest album. It's called Lamplit Prose. Came out in 2018, excuse me. So it's, a year-ish old now. And no, to anybody listening who knows what I do in real life, my job is working with projectors. I was not searching for the term, how do you clean dirty projectors, when I found this band.
Bullshit.
It just so happens that I heard one of the songs on the radio and I was like, wow, they're kind of interesting. Let's see what they're doing.
Alexa, how do you fix dirty projectors?
Alexa.
It just starts playing.
This video projector doesn't work very well. How do I clean it?
All of a sudden.
Yeah. Oh, wow. This is pretty good.
Like this. What is this?
That's exactly. All right. Who am I kidding? That's exactly what happened.
I know.
How do you clean dirty projectors? Dirty Projectors is a band. Well.
Well, now I must listen. But I'm excited because I've never heard of them. So
that's one of the reasons I picked them, actually.
I know. That'll be a nice education for me. And hopefully everybody else that'll listen.
Yeah. I hope you all hate it.
Don't worry, I will.
It's been a lifetime of me picking music that all the people around me hate. So hopefully that trend will continue.
Right, staying true to form.
So anyways, please do contact us, info@audiojudo.com. If you want to tell us how much we suck or how great some of these albums touched your life, touched you inappropriately, hopefully.
Oh my.
If you want to tell us...
Steve Perry touched you inappropriately?
Steve Perry touched you inappropriately.
I knew it.
If you want to tell us how these albums touched your lives, get in touch with us at AudioJudo on Twitter, Facebook.com/AudioJudo. And until the next episode, keep listening out there.
Right. Have a good week, everybody. Talk to you soon.